So I have a question about 2030. So a lot of people are predicting a transition. 50% EVs will be sold in 2030, 50% ICE. And I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what will be the volume that Tesla will be selling by 2030. I believe they've stated a goal of what? 20 million?
20 million.
Do you think now, looking at Elon's goals, maybe he truly wants to be at 9 million, 13 million, 15 million. And if he sets the goal at 20 and misses, he'll be leading the world in volume. I think it'll be more than Toyota. I think Toyota is like 10 million or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do you think it'll be a high goal and miss and still be great, kind of like the timing for some of his stuff? What do you think?
So I'm on the camp, and I think this is sort of a small camp, but I really think 20 million by 2030 is legitimate. And the reason why is I draw the parallel to what happened with the 500,000 units by 2020 that they laid out in 2014 that people thought was absolutely bananas. This was around the time they were making somewhere between 200 to 50,000 cars a year. And people are like, there's no way. That means a freaking 50% CAGR growth for the next 6-7 years. No one else has ever done that. Lo and behold, they hit it. And that was completely mind-blowing. So when it comes to large-scale manufacturing goals, it seems like Tesla has a track record to hit those goals. To hit those goals, Tesla is going to be selling into a fleet of cars that's about 1.4 billion cars large, where 97% of those are gas cars. And within that context, 20 million EVs sold to replace 1.4 billion gas cars is quite small still. So they have the TAM, the total addressable market, to grow into. I think the compact car will be the biggest variable for them to get there, the sort of cheaper car. And if we think about how Tesla is going to be building that car, it's going to be about 50% the size and the cost of the Model 3, Model Y-ish. And the footprint of the factory is going to be able to allow them to create 2 times more cars than the existing 3Y. So that's a 4x factor, right? Ish. So they'll be able to do 4 times the amount of cars out of one factory with a compact car versus a Model 3 and a Y, which means that you need 1/4 of the factories to create the same number of compact cars versus a Model 3 and a Model Y. And if you put that for the next few years, if you say, okay, how many more factories does Tesla need to build to get to, say, 20 million capacity with those numbers in mind, that's 5 or 6 more factories. That's 1 factory a year that they have to announce and build. And they're on that cadence. They announced Giga Mexico, which is supposed to break ground here in the next month or 2. And then as long as they announce at least 1 more factory per year, why wouldn't they hit it, right? It just becomes a question of price. Are people going to be willing to pay whatever price Tesla demands for that car? But they've made it very clear that their goal is to advance sustainable EVs as much as humanly possible. So they're going to lead that effort quite strongly. So I think they'll get there. Worst case scenario, they'll reach 15 million, even 13 million, or even 10 million in 2030. But they'll hit 20 million not long thereafter, because they're still going to be on an exponential growth curve as they build out these factories for these compact cars. So that's how I think about it. You tell me if I'm bananas. Do you think I'm bananas, Cory?
I wouldn't say bananas. That makes sense to me. And it's just, you look at the macroeconomic scenario. So we have to avoid a long-term major recession,
sure,
any major wars. There could be things that, what I call a black swan event, that we don't know of.
Mm-hmm.
So if things stay rather stable, actually I prefer we go into a recession and get out of it, because we've been in limbo for a while, just so we can get moving past that. So barring any of that, I see 13 million, 11 to 13 million on the low end. Like, I'd be disappointed, but that would make sense to me. And the manufacturing ramp up for this small vehicle and the demand globally, that's kind of the wild card. But I think they're set up to win that battle.
Yeah. I think how that car progresses and how that car ramps from, say, it producing the first car until 2027 will give us a good idea if 20 million is actually legitimately a target that Tesla's going to reach. So, yeah, it's good to hear your take. It's good to hear your take. I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and do the math on 20 million. So 20 million vehicles, the average sale price will probably drop because the compact car will be cheaper. So I think that even though the compact car could sell for 25,000, I think the average configuration will sell in the low 30s because people will probably buy higher end features. Some will be FSD, all sorts of different paint colors and seats, whatever. Then you'll introduce the Cybertruck, which will be more expensive. So I think the average sale price, the average vehicle price, probably low 40s, mid 40s, low 40s. It'll come down, I believe. So do the math on that. Eric, you got a calculator? You're sitting over there. What's 20 million times, let's say, 45,000? What is that? $1 trillion. 900 billion. I think it's 900 billion.
It's a lot of money.
I'm asking him to do the math. 45,000 times 2 million. 900 billion.
Yeah, that's 900. Yeah.
Almost $1 trillion. Yeah. So that's a prediction I will make. I think Tesla will be the first $1 trillion revenue OEM. I'll say that.
Yeah. Hey, are you including full self-driving revenue in that?
Yeah, that's everything.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're at what 75 billion, so they're at 0.075 trillion, not even 0.1 trillion. Look at that, we're talking in trillions now. Yeah.
Big numbers. I really do think, I think Tesla's sort of long-term advantage, and I would love to get your take on this because I've been thinking about this a lot. I think in the EV market, Tesla, maybe BYD, and a few others are really going to control what we would call the affordable sort of down market segment, where they're going to be able to create really affordable cars for the population. And then the higher price brackets are going to be controlled by, say, your traditional legacy automakers, at the higher price bracket.
BMW, Mercedes, Audi. Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, I think the survivability of the premium brands is very easy. So whether that's a hypercar or a luxury car, that's a small percentage of the population that will want to differentiate themselves from a brand for the masses. So Tesla is a premium car now, right? They're like a luxury vehicle in most instances based on their price and their class and their size, especially the Model S and the X and even the Y at the high end. But if you introduce this compact car, it's more the Model T. Think about it. It's the vehicle that everyone should and can be able to afford. And I think you'll see people in the premium market want to differentiate themselves buying, other vehicles. Even if a Tesla is a better vehicle, they'll want to buy the BMW 7 Series or a Mercedes S550 or whatever the equivalent large vehicle is. So to answer your question, I think the luxury traditional players will be fine. But VW, Ford, and General Motors, they are essentially brands for the masses. Now, yes, Ford has Lincoln, GM has GMC, the Denali series, and they have Cadillac. Those higher end brands can offer these, but they're typically variations off of their core models. Like some of the Cadillacs are derivatives of the lower end models where they have, a GMC or a Chevy off of the same platform. And so it'll be interesting, but I think the luxury end will be fine. But if you're the VWs of the world and you can't make a competitive product to compete with that low-cost Tesla, it could mean major contraction for that company.
Yeah, right. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Some of the verbiage out of Jim Farley at the quarter one earnings report was sort of alluding to this, where they talked about growth at all costs is not going to be part of the EV strategy for Ford, which kind of tells me that, hey, so maybe, I mean, they're making negative 102% margin on their EVs, and I would understand why that wouldn't be. I mean, they're already losing money on the car. They can't afford really to win on price. They have to win on some other measure until they can get their scale up to be able to produce EVs in a mass market manner. But how long is that going to take? And what are the demands from the public?
Yeah.
And is Ford going to be aligned to be able to do that? Right? It's such a complex situation. It's just feels so transitional in nature.
Are you familiar with the Netflix Blockbuster story about how Blockbuster had a meeting with Netflix? I think Reed Hastings early on, and so Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix for some small amount. I think it was $2 million or $20 million, something like that. And they essentially laughed. They like laughed them out of the room. And now Netflix is a behemoth, and Blockbuster is gone. I said, so will there be? Has that Blockbuster moment already happened? You know, so back when Tesla was tiny, the large OEMs just dismissed them. Nah, not a player, irrelevant, don't care, not a player, irrelevant, too small, blah, you know. And now it's to the point where it's reached that Netflix momentum. And it's like, do you think Tesla, so my question for you, do you think Tesla will reach the point where they could actually buy a small OEM, buy a traditional OEM, you know, or you know, to take over that?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely get to that point. Them wanting to do it is a completely different question, because then that means taking on all those assets, right, that are kind of obsolete. But yeah, I 100% think that's going to be the case. I mean, it's the innovator's dilemma. It's the innovator's dilemma to a T. It's Xerox, Nokia, Blockbuster, BlackBerry. You go down the list of all these giant players in the business corporate world that were disrupted out of existence. And I think for some automakers, the momentum is we're too far into the game for them to be able to reverse course. You know, I can make my predictions on who those automakers are going to be, but I don't want to, because I want to make sure that you know, I'm rooting for them to succeed. I want as many EV makers as humanly possible. But if you don't have the right chips in place, if you're not making the right bets now, it's going to be too late. We're too far down the path for these guys to decide to get into the game. So and Sandy talks about this often, you know, and this is Sandy's one of the ones that really has explained this phenomena beautifully. Is if you're starting now, you're too late. You're too late. If you're not far ahead enough in the game today, where you can at least rival Tesla in the mid segment in some way with meaningful volume, you're probably too late as well. But you could still make some headway by taking some large bets and hoping that you have a product line that resonates with the consumer and offers the technology that the customer is going to demand in this decade, which is going to be heavily geared towards software and autonomy. So if you can't do that, then you might be in trouble as well. So yeah, we'll see, man. They'll definitely be able to buy them, but I don't know if they'll want to.
Yeah, so it's an exciting time to be covering all of these transitions and all these companies.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the next probably decade will be wildly entertaining as we see the rise and the fall of different companies, and it's really exciting to be alive right now.